and welcome into the OBR Straight Talk. I am your host, Jared Mueller. You can always find me on Twitter at Jared K. Mueller. That's at JaredKMueller. And you can find the OBR at the OBR. I hope everyone is having a great Friday and has an exciting weekend ahead. Hopefully the weather plays out well for you wherever you are. I know in Ohio it is the start of the season where there are fairs and all kinds of things going on the weekends where you can spend your time, spend your money, and many times spend your sanity. So let us make sure that we are handling everything as well as we can. As the summer months come, the heat comes, the kids get out of school, and all kinds of fun, excitement, and stress can come your way. So I hope everyone is enjoying their Friday and will enjoy their weekend as we are now in the middle of May, rolling on into June, July, and August, what always to me was considered the summer months. Unfortunately now kids go back to school in August, like August 10th, 11th, 12th, those kind of times. So August, where it is blazing hot, the kids go back to school, families, parents get happy, and things go well. So I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for all of you that tuned into the last episode where we talked about embracing the hype of the Cleveland Browns. I hope as Browns fans who have been through so much, that have seen so much, that has heard so much. We all know the misery montage. We all know the quarterback graveyard. We know all of that kind of stuff. I hope you are all able to enjoy this process. For a lot of people, enjoying and the Browns don't go together. For a lot of us, because of experience, it is our natural inclination to look for what is going wrong, what is bad. That's just experience, right? It's like in May and June, expecting it to be hot. You don't think about it, you just do. And so we're going to find that there are going to be some people, both media fans and local media and national media, that are just naturally going to be kind of trained to think about the Browns in a negative light and to look for the problems. As fans, I encourage you, look for the good, look for the exciting, enjoy all of this. But set reasonable expectations. We're going to have Jake Burns, part of the OBR, part of Cleveland.com, founder of Browns Film Breakdown, as well as a part of Waiting for Next Year. We're going to have him on here in a few minutes. And one of the things that I want to talk to Jake about is what are our expectations? Specifically, we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield. And I want to talk to Jake, what is his expectations for Baker Mayfield? Are they realistic? Are they going to set everybody up to be a little too excited? But as fans, what do you do with those expectations? Because I talked about yesterday, the 2011 Philadelphia Eagles, their dream team turned into a little bit of a nightmare, even though they finished the season 8-8, is they were set up. They had all the hype. They had all the excitement. Everyone thought they were going to be the next big thing in the NFL after finishing 10-6 the previous season and adding all of these exciting players, only to go 8-8. So set realistic expectations so that you can enjoy the process. Hopefully the Browns don't start off 1-4 like the Eagles did in 2011, but they might start out 2-2. They might start out 1-1. How do you as fans who are just used to losing deal with that? That is going to be a huge question for you to answer for yourself. I hope you are able to enjoy what is coming, what this season can be from now until whenever the season ends, hopefully late January, early February, whenever that Super Bowl thing happens. From now until then, enjoy the ride. Enjoy everything that goes with it. But here's what we know. The ride is going to be driven really by one man, and that man is Baker Mayfield. So coming up next, we're going to have Jake Burns on, our quarterback guru who knows as much about quarterbacks as I would say anybody you're going to get information from. I know that's a big statement, and I hope Jake can live up to it. All right, and so now on the OBR Straight Talk, we have Mr. Jake Burns. If you don't know Jake, you can find Jake all over the place. He provides all 22 content for the Orange and Brown Report. He is on cleveland.com doing some great X and O work. Make sure you check it out. Get smarter as a NFL fan reading his stuff. He also is the creator of Browns Film Breakdown, which has just some great video analysis and a whole lot more. And still, when he finds time, back at his old stomping grounds at Waiting for Next Year. Jake, how you doing today, buddy?
Fantastic. I cannot complain. I'm excited to have a chance to jump on the OBR Straight Talk. It's been a while. I think I was on there at the beginning of last year, but yeah, let's do it, man.
Absolutely, brother. So, hey, I like to let our listeners get to know my guests pretty well. So, I try to find a fun question of the day that'll just kind of start us off. So, this question comes as I know that you have a child that may be keeping you up at night and thinking about all that comes with having a child. So, is there a food that you ate as a child that you would not eat now and or would not feed to your child? That is today's question of the day on the OBR Straight Talk. So, Jake, is there a food that you ate as a child that you would not eat now and or you would not feed to your child?
Man, I ate as a child. I don't seem to work in reverse where I ate things as a child and now I don't like them as an adult. I seem to be expanding as I go, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, oh man. I was forced to eat peas when I was young, and like I can do a lot of vegetables, but I really can't do peas because of the texture of peas. So, as terrible an answer as peas is, I was forced to eat them as a kid. I will not be forcing my son to eat those in his young life. We will do other vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, things like that. But we will skip the peas if he does not like them on first try. There it is.
Nice, nice. So, one of the reasons this came up is I'll be spending some time with my family this weekend again, 2 weekends in a row, which is a rare occurrence. And so, thinking about the food that we might have, we were a big casserole family, so we did things like beans and hamburger. We had hamburger gravy over mashed potatoes. The one that really pops out to me, that even as I'm about to say it probably makes me a little ill, is thinking of tuna noodle casserole. So
Uh-huh.
if you've never had it, it's some kind of cream soup with tuna over some noodles or in some mixed together in some kind of casserole that there is not a chance you could get me to eat that now, nor would I ever think about putting those things together. So for me, and my answer to the question of the day, it is tuna noodle casserole. If you've never had it, don't try it. Is that something that was on the menu for you, Jake, as a kid at all?
We had tuna noodle casserole often, very often. And I don't think I've had it in my adult life. I think we will pass on that probably as well. This is a fun question. I haven't even considered many of these. They have a lot like hamburger helper.
Yep,
We used to have
exactly.
that too. Yeah.
Yep. So, well, that's that. Thank you for getting to know that you do not like peas. Somehow that is still something that I like, but my wife has no interest in it at all. And since she is the baker and the cook normally, we don't have peas in this house very often. So for the rest of the stuff that people really are tuning into the OBR Straight Talk, again, I am your host, Jared Mueller. And with me is Jake Burns, who you can find all over the place at the OBR, at cleveland.com and at Waiting for Next Year. So today, Jake, is all about Baker Mayfield. And so I want to start out, since you're my quarterback guru, what were your thoughts on Baker Mayfield when he was coming out in the 2018 draft? And with those thoughts, where did you have him ranked for the Browns as they were picking number one overall?
Well, he from about early October on, I started to feel confident in the fact that not enough people were talking about Mayfield. I think we do a lot of revisionist history with him as a prospect, like who everyone thought he was and where he was ranked because he's turned out to be such a good, rookie in his initial time in the NFL. So like, um, not everybody was as high as I think they claimed to be. So But I felt good about him, and then I watched the Ohio State game, and then sort of after the Ohio State game, I thought it was pretty obvious, so I felt comfortable wanting to tweet something out, and I made it pretty clear that he's the quarterback one for me. I mean, I know Rosen and Darnold get all the love, and like Josh Allen is floating around um, floating around on radars, but it's like to me it was what are we missing with Baker Mayfield? If you remove all of the external factors. So here's what I say, Jared, when I do this stuff is like, if you make every quarterback prospect 6 foot, 195 pounds, what do you love about them? That's where I think you should try to do, because then you're looking at just the intangibles, the accuracy, sort of all of the other things that lead into base, throwing base, arm motion, all of those things that are important. You can sort of judge them on an equal playing field. And to me, it wasn't even that close when you really got to sort of level that playing field. But as it approached, I thought that it just didn't seem like the Browns were as interested as everybody wanted to believe they were. So they played it really well. I was even surprised up to the end when they took him, but I was extremely happy, obviously, when they did take him, because he was, in my opinion, the best quarterback in this draft. And I, like I said, I didn't think it was altogether all too close, even though I think Sam Darnold is going to have a good career. And Josh Allen was a little bit better than I think people thought he was going to be initially. It doesn't really change where I'm at with him. Doesn't change the guy I believed was quarterback one very early on. And yeah, I think that his rookie year he exceeded expectations of what we thought he could be. Even somebody like me who was very high on him, he exceeded my expectations on that one.
And so for you named a lot of those traits, and there's many when you're looking at anybody, but especially a quarterback. For you, was it one trait that stood out over the others, or was that he was just high in so many of those traits that maybe one does stand out, but in reality, it was that he was so good, whether it's off platform, on platform, his feet, his reads, his accuracy, was it that he was good across the board, or were there a couple traits that stood out to you when you were looking at his college film from Oklahoma?
Well, yeah, to me, I want to judge arm talent first, because above all else, I think arm talent is going to help you succeed. It helps you overcome some things that can slow you down at the next level. And the arm talent was there. I think people slept on his arm strength in general. He can really drive the football, and I think people, because of his size, tried to sort of pigeonhole him into having average arm strength. I just don't think that's true. And if you watch his film, I'm not sure where you're getting that take from. And it was the mixture of, when I say arm talent, it's arm strength, quick release, ability to drive the football, deep ball, intermediate, all of those things. And then you mix in accuracy, ball placement, which are all part of accuracy and arm talent. To me, it was pretty obvious. And I think that to sort of go to the next level, I wasn't sure how he would translate into NFL offenses or what they would ask him to do. Like the Browns put him in quite a few 7-step drops and just different traditional NFL things that he had never done. So there was sort of a little bit of guesswork as to how he would handle those under center actions, how he would handle longer drops, how he would handle NFL pass rush. And he was way better than I anticipated. I knew he could throw off platform. I knew he could throw from weird arm angles and drop his elbow and throw sidearm when he needed to fit something in. But his ability to get out of pressure without losing downfield vision was something I was very interested in seeing at the next level, something I wasn't entirely too confident about, because at his time in Oklahoma, he didn't have to do that very often. But he was if there was one area in which he exceeded my expectations, that was the area, because he was really effective helping out his tackles, moving around, especially the last 9 weeks of the season. 8 weeks of the season. It's sort of being adept at feeling pressure wherever it was coming from, whether it was his high side or low side, or in front of his face between the guards, center guards. He was able to move, manipulate, get out of the pocket, and throw really, really accurate footballs on the run.
That's great. And I think for me, as I looked at Baker, obviously there were so many good things on the field. I had some concerns about things you just couldn't know. And I think part of that is just being a mental health professional. My brain tends to go that direction. The first was everybody talked how great of a leader he was at Oklahoma. Was that real? Would that work at a professional level? It works with younger kids and kids who can be excitable, but would Baker actually be able to lead? Would that kind of drain some of the veterans? Would they kind of push back against that? Would that create, some conflict? One of the things that probably is going to sound weird is I saw the pinpoint accuracy, but I also saw receivers running wide open. And so we all know pressure can burst pipes. And so one of my concerns was as those windows shrunk, would that accuracy actually change for him, which we didn't see. But that was definitely something that I had a concern from. Just looking at his Oklahoma tape is, yes, pinpoint accuracy. He would make the difficult throws when needed, but he had so many receivers that were open that really the pressure throws weren't as often. He didn't have to fit it into a tight window, even though he was. And so I did have some concerns about that. And then the unknown that we just didn't know is who is he as the off the field guy? Obviously, we saw all the video that he got tackled by a police officer, and I didn't care at all about planting the flag. Well, I cared as a Buckeye. I didn't care from a evaluating a talent kind of thing. But, is that real? Is that who he is? Is that just a part of his personality? Or was that him trying too hard? Because when you think about being a professional, you have to be real. I think it's one of the reasons many of us love Freddie Kitchens, love Baker Mayfield, is those are just real guys being themselves, not trying to be anything that they're not. And so I did have some concerns about him coming out. But then he got into his rookie year, and Jake, I think you were high on him. But were there a few things that you took away from his rookie season, even being so high, that surprised you, worried you? Where were you at with Baker's rookie season, even knowing you had him quarterback one?
Yeah, so if I'm looking at areas that I think he has to improve, things that he struggled with, I think that he has a propensity to miss high. When he throws, he had 14 interceptions, and when he has a propensity to miss, like I said, it's over the middle high, and that's a deadly thing to miss in the NFL. So he has to really try to settle himself on some of those adverse throws over the middle. Like, nobody wants Mayfield to stop being who he is, which is not. I wouldn't even say he's a calculated risk taker, in my opinion, not necessarily just a free-willing or free slinging gunslinger, air quotes there. I don't get that vibe from. Like, yeah, he'll make some pretty crazy throws, but I don't see, like, people love the Brett Favre comparison, and Odell Beckham himself used it. That's fine, and like Brett Favre had a hell of a career over the long haul, but you would want in modern football, this is not a knock on Brett Favre, but like in modern football, you want to cut down on those interceptions because the game is skewed for quarterbacks to do that. So you want him to still thrive on tight window throws, but you also want him to be a little bit more heady on what throws he's really good at, getting comfortable, or what throws does he have a propensity to sail or miss. And that is something he'll have to work on. So he was never a high interception guy in college. So it was sort of a new level of turnover this year that we saw from him. And, there's a couple of them too where I think sometimes he needs to know to eat a play. That comes with, as the game slows down for you, it's okay to maybe take a sack here instead of forcing in this throw to a guy who's tightly covered on this curl route. Like if you think of the Baltimore interception, the first one, or you think of the ball to Higgins against Baltimore at home that he threw when Higgins turned upfield and he's sort of fading away. Like he'll occasionally fade away from throws, and he needs to really work on over the middle decision making on some of those throws could get better. So if you understand, like, it probably would be better to eat an 8-yard sack here and not turn it over at at our 45-yard line and then punt it away. You get what I'm saying? It's Absolutely. Just like a couple of those mental check marks he could use, not necessarily feeling like he has to force a throw in, like the second interception in Houston where he threw to the backside to Callaway on a just a simple curl route and just completely missed the corner lurking in coverage. Like, just some of those things he needs to know, like, okay, I don't have an answer here. It's okay to get out of the pocket and throw this thing away without necessarily forcing something. I didn't think he forced much. Like the Denver ball down the middle of the field, if you recall his interception there in Denver, that one I felt was pretty forced down the middle of the field. But there weren't many. And you're going to have that. And he had bad luck, Jared, with turnovers. Like 14 of his 14 interceptable throws were intercepted. So that's like, you have variance in that from year to year. But I would imagine that when you talk to him, he's going to say, I need to cut down on turning the football over. So if he's going to be what everyone thinks he could be, it's going to involve cutting down on interceptions, turning the ball over, and a spike in touchdowns, maybe getting up to the 37, 38, 39, 40 touchdown mark. like the 4-to-1 ratio would be what like your dream for Baker Mayfield is. So that's like 35 to 40 touchdowns a year and 10 interceptions this year. So can you live with 14 to 15 interceptions a year? Sure, yeah, but you want him to be that guy. Like that's where Browns fans have to figure out what their expectations are for Mayfield. And some of those expectations will play out over the next few years, but like is he elite Matthew Stafford, or is he that next tier of like Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, those guys who put up killer regular season statistics? What Patrick Mahomes was able to do this past year. That's where we have to see what he is, and it's hanging in the balance. Yeah, he had a fantastic rookie year and he set some records, but like, what is he? You know what I mean? There's still a lot of that we'll have to figure out, and you don't know until 2 or 3 years into it. But I try to remind people that quarterback progress isn't always linear. Like, just because he had a good rookie year doesn't mean he's going to go out and throw 40 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Like, that's just not how it works, even though the weapons are better. So we'll just have to get a feel. Year 2, as he sort of settles into who he is and teams adjust to him and he adjusts to what teams are doing, that cat and mouse game that the likes of Phillip Rivers and Tom Brady and Drew Brees have over time been able to figure out. Can he figure that out the same way and become this force that is pretty much dangerous and one of the best players in the league week to week?
Yeah, and I think, folks, Jake Burns here from the OBR, Cleveland.com, and Waiting for Next Year. If you want to know how you know someone knows football, you just heard Jake talk about 3 different throws off the top of his head, 2 against Baltimore in 2 different games, and then a throw against Denver. That's someone who knows football, and that's someone who has studied the film. That's how you know you're listening to someone who's really, really smart. What I also heard from you, Jake, is that there are times where he forces the ball. It's not a ton of times, but that over the middle kind of deep ball, mid to deep ball can sometimes float on him. Would you say that's mostly mechanical then, for some of those middle of the field throws?
Yeah, you watch any shorter quarterback, anytime that they have to drive the ball maybe over somebody in their face or in an angle that allows them to get the ball over the second level, there's going to be like an elbow dip because they're going to be trying to really drive the football over somebody. And if that ball doesn't have the requisite touch, that's going to be the trajectory of over and under, meaning it's going to arrive over the linebackers but in front of the safeties. If you drive it too much, it will sail. And that is what can happen to shorter guys. While taller guys can be that more over the top, that almost throwing from a high trajectory downward down the field. So that is one of the advantages of being a taller quarterback, is that once you reach your peak arm motion, it's almost like you're throwing down over the top of the second level instead of having to necessarily drive the football. So I imagine Mayfield will continue to work on finding passing windows, those sorts of things, but you just got to get comfortable. For him, he's got to get comfortable and be able to feel things out, driving the football down the field. What throws can I make? What throws should I be cautious against making because this isn't my strongest part of my game, all of that stuff. And I wanted to ask him that Wednesday. I'm going to try to get up there and ask him that next Wednesday when I go up to OTAs, sort of if they let him talk to the media again, is, if you watch Tom Brady's video work, his behind building Tom or whatever that is, he really focuses on arm whip, how he's able to create the most torque from driving his arm through from the top to the front pocket. If you watch him, he maniacally worked on that and that stuff. You watch Peyton Manning videos, his old work with David Cutcliffe. It was, how does he dip off of that third step? How does he dip drive? How quickly, what is his most effective manner of dip drive that is going to allow him to get peak torque on the football? Like, those guys work at that stuff maniacally, and you watch them and they obsess over it, and you're like, God, why are they obsessing over that? Like, that's what they do. Like Peyton Manning's video work and footwork at this play action run game, like that was something that is like historic. Like the way he put that stuff on film, of how he maniacally works at that. Like, to me, what my question would be to Baker is, what are you really working on improving year 2? Like, what are you coming out to practice every day saying, I have to do this to be at peak performance? Because that's something I want to know. Sort of what ticks in their brain. What do you want to improve year 2, and why? What part of your game are you really focusing on? Are you focusing on hip drive? Are you focusing on being those middle of the field throws? Are you focusing on pulling the ball down more instead of driving your elbow underneath it? Like, that stuff I want to know. So hopefully I can get that question in next week. But yeah, that mechanical stuff is something that and you talk about it, like mechanics in the NFL aren't going to be perfect. They call it playing in chaos for a reason, because it is chaos every time you drop back. You have to be able to throw sidearm. You have to be able to change arm motions. Like if you watch Baker's touchdown, if you guys recall the Week 16 home game against the Bengals, that little drive pick play, if you recall, to Rashard Higgins that he scored, where he looped from the left side all the way around the right and dove and stretched the ball out. That play, Baker wanted to throw it initially. Someone's arm got in the way, pump faked it, and almost threw it literally sidearm. But it was perfectly thrown and on the run, and his feet weren't square to the line of scrimmage like you want quarterback textbook 101 stuff. He didn't do that, because you have to be able to throw all sorts of crazy ways, and it's about balancing it out. If you can get a clean throw, if you can get clean mechanics, do it. But sometimes you can't. And the best in the business, the Aaron Rodgers of the world, can do it in a variety of ways. Mayfield has that trait, but it's about balancing how often you have to do that versus how often you need to do that. And if you continue, and I keep calling on certain plays, but if you remember when the Browns were at Pittsburgh in Week 8, he sort of faded away with a bad base on a fade route, and Joe Hayden picked it off, if you recall, up the right sideline. It's just like, you didn't need to do that. So can you get your mechanics right when you don't need to, force bad mechanics that some plays call for? So that's all a balancing act. You get what I'm saying? Like, you just got to kind of figure it out. And I trust that over the long haul, he's going to do enough mechanically well, but he can also do the stuff that is the tougher. I would rather have a guy that occasionally misses with bad mechanics, but can make a majority of his throws through bad mechanics well, than a guy who just can't do that, because so many guys can't do that it costs them a chance to be really good in this league. So I like that our guy has that ability to do that.
Absolutely. And folks, when you hear mechanical words like elbow dip, arm whip, torque, hip drive, those are the kind of details that people like Jake, and then as he's talking about Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and hopefully Baker Mayfield, those are the kind of things that matter. It's not just about completions and who was open and some of the things that you've heard over and over again in the mainstream media. All of those little details decide whether a quarterback, again, is a hyped up Matthew Stafford, as Jake talked about, or really is in that upper echelon level. And that is the kind of film breakdown and things that we get from Jake at the OBR, at Cleveland.com, and at Waiting for Next Year, as well as Brown's film breakdown. So, Jake, last question for today. Again, thank you for your time. Is if you had to pick quarterbacks just for the 2019 season, so we're not worried about age or contracts or any of those kind of things. If you were ranking quarterbacks just for this upcoming season, where would you have Baker Mayfield ranked?
Good question. I'm not sure I'm good at ranking these guys. Here's what I'll say he's in. He should be in tier 1, meaning he should aim to have a year that is as close to Drew Brees, guys who put up really, really fascinating statistics. Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and like what Patrick Mahomes' year will look like this year is very interesting, because he could potentially lose 2 of his best weapons. So he's still going to be good. But that's where Mayfield needs to try to head. Like, he could be tier 2 with like the Roethlisberger, and Brady's sort of become a tier 2 guy. Not that Tom Brady's not fantastic, but you look at the burden he's been put on. Like, he's not throwing up those crazy statistical years anymore, and he lost Gronkowski. So you're kind of trying to find a balance. But my goal, if I were Baker Mayfield, is I want to be a top 5 quarterback. I want to be in the same breath as those guys I just mentioned, the guys who are doing it at the highest level. And then I would say, hey, I want to separate myself from Jared Goff. I want to separate myself from Carson Wentz. I want to separate myself from those guys who are tier 2, and I want to join Rodgers. I want to join I want to join Breeze, and I want to join Mahomes. Like, that's where my goal would be. Now, the good thing is, if you're looking at just the external factors, really good offensive coordinator and head coach in terms of offensive structure, really good backfield, and a fantastic group of wide receivers. So there's no reason that should not be his expectation, and it shouldn't be the fan base's expectation that he becomes a top 5 quarterback this year. Does it happen? Maybe not. And does that mean you need to freak out? Absolutely not. But that should be the goal. And based on his rookie year, based on his expectations, based on the group around him, that makes the most logical sense for me as far as his progress goes. Like I said, doesn't mean it happens. Nothing is guaranteed. This league is really hard. So you don't know. But at the same time, that should be the goal. That should be the expectation. And that's really cool. Like, we are having an expectation as Browns fans going from a quarterback, and I wrote about this because I wrote about how Baker Mayfield makes everybody better around him. And we had the best quarterback year since Bernie Kosar, really, like the best statistical season from a Browns quarterback. And that's crazy to think that was the late 80s, early 90s. And that we finally found a guy who can do that stuff. But the interesting thing will be is, what is his peak going to look like? We all presume he will keep getting better, but that's not always the case. So you have to see it. Is his peak top 5 quarterback type peak? Is his peak elite type peak that we all think it might be? That's what's going to be really fascinating to me, especially in year 2, when he has all of these weapons now around him who are older, and then the improved weapons of Odell Beckham and then Kareem Hunt and all of those other names that have sort of jumped in the mix, and like I said, have gone another year. Higgins, Njoku, Callaway, all of those guys. So I would expect him, logically, not based on fandom type nonsense, to be a top 5 quarterback. And I think that is where the expectations and what is fair should align.
That sounds great. And so, Browns fans, Jake Burns, quarterback guru, is telling you that a top 5, worst case top 10 quarterback in 2019 is the starting quarterback for Cleveland Browns in Baker Mayfield. Again, we have Jake Burns. Jake, I appreciate your time today. You can find Jake at Jake_Burns18. You can find his work at the OBR, at Cleveland.com, at Browns Film Breakdown, and at Waiting for Next Year. Some of the things that we learned from Jake today is that he does not want to eat peas. He'll remember that he is not a fan of tuna noodle casserole. And then we learned that this guy remembers throws from all kinds of games from last year, not just remembers that they happened, but he remembers who, what, where, and how. That is why he is our quarterback guru. That is why he is our film guru. Jake, I appreciate your time today. In segment 2, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you've said to us today and what that means about expectations for Browns fans. But I appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Jared, thanks, buddy. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Folks, I hope you learned a lot there from Jake. It's one of the reasons when Bob Evans and I were talking about taking over the Straight Talk podcast, one of the things that is my goal is I've been blessed to have a lot of relationships that have developed over time, primarily through the combine and some of those kind of things, with people that I think can bring you a lot of great information. And so Jake is obviously one of the best. The fact that the Orange and Brown Report, Cleveland.com, that we have an opportunity to work with Jake and learn from Jake is amazing. But I hope that as you listen to that, you hear all of the little details that go into being a quarterback. All of the little functionalities that go into being a quarterback. I hope you also learn what someone who really knows football, really knows quarterbacks, and has really dedicated himself to learning, understanding, and communicating about the game. That's what that person sounds like. Jake Burns knows football. Jake Burns is someone that if you took him into a room with people who barely knew football, would leave there understanding football in a way that, honestly, many media don't understand, many fans don't understand, and sadly, sometimes it seems like some coaches don't understand. So I appreciate Jake coming on with us again. You can find him on Twitter at Jake_Burns18. You can find his work at the Orange and Brown Report, Cleveland.com, Browns Film Breakdown, and Waiting for Next Year. I really wanted to spend just a few minutes here at the end of the podcast kind of talking about what Jake, especially there at the end, said to us about Baker Mayfield. And that is that it was a really interesting way of stating it, is that Jake talked about he's not really one of those ranking type guys, but he said that it should be a realistic expectation for Baker Mayfield and Browns fans that he puts himself in the top tier of quarterbacks in the NFL next year. Let's go ahead and repeat that. Jake Burns, the quarterback guru, the guy that showed you over a 30-minute span that he knows more about quarterback play than some people know about their children. I kid a little bit on that one. He said it is realistic that Baker Mayfield and Browns fans, for them to expect, hope, see Baker Mayfield in the same tier as Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, and as he talked a little bit, Tom Brady, where he has been probably dropping down a tier this year, maybe even last year. But that is a realistic expectation. So remember earlier and yesterday, I talked to you about embracing the hype. Can you get more hype than that? That Jake believes that Baker Mayfield would be in the same conversation as the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, obviously, a lot of things have to go right. The Browns have to not have injuries. He has to not be injured. He has to find good timing with all of his weapons. Todd Monken and Freddie Kitchens have to really figure it out together how they want to run the offense. The defense has to put Baker Mayfield in a position where he isn't just set up to throw the ball because they have to come from behind. A lot of things have to happen, but in year two, where some people worry about a sophomore slump just in general for all players, in year two, Jake Burns thinks it's realistic to expect Baker Mayfield to be among the top 5 quarterbacks and in the top tier of quarterbacks in the NFL. Those are some lofty expectations. The other thing that you heard from Jake that really stood out to me is the difference between a tier 1 quarterback and kind of everybody else is in all of the details. He talked about, as a shorter quarterback like Drew Brees, the ability to know where your throwing windows, know where your elbow dip and your arm whip and your hip drive, knowing all of those little details really sets apart tier 1 quarterbacks from everybody else. So I'm looking forward to Jake getting that answer at OTAs hopefully next week, is what is Baker Mayfield really working on? Not the pat answer to say, I want to get done with interceptions, or I want to bring the number down. I want to get on the same page with my wide receivers. All of those things are really important. My hope is that Jake is given the ability to ask some of those detailed questions about throws over the middle that have led to interceptions, about forcing some balls on curl routes. Those answers to those questions are going to be huge. But I hope you also heard the difference between tier 1 analysts and everybody else with Jake Burns. So I don't know how many people are in tier 1 analysts, but I know Jake Burns is in that. Everybody else, whoever is not in tier 1, has a lot of learning to do about what it means to be a quarterback at the NFL level. And I am blessed to be able to learn from Jake, to be able to communicate with Jake, and I hope you guys see that as well. And so what happens when the Cleveland Browns hype train is driven by a top-tier quarterback? Fans, there's still going to be turnovers. There's still going to be mistakes, especially with some of the new cast, the offensive line not exactly being something that you can know that you can depend on, especially at tackle with Robinson and Hubbard. There's going to be some ups and downs. There is with any franchise. So this year, especially with the Browns only playing about, I think it's half their games at 1 o'clock, one of the things I want to encourage fans, and I've done this for years, I want to encourage fans to watch other quarterbacks and to watch other teams. See what other teams look like. Because the problem is if you only watch Browns games and you only watch highlights, it often can feel like the Tom Brady's, Drew Brees', Aaron Rodgers of the world, that they rarely make mistakes, that they rarely have bad games, that what we're seeing on the field from the Browns isn't normal for other teams. So even as the Browns get better and hopefully again are fighting for a playoff position, the division title, and possibly even more, it's important as fans to have a better feel for what good football looks like. In the past, when you've watched Browns games, sometimes you've thought, oh, that's what good football looks like on the other side of the ball. And then oftentimes that gets minimized because they're playing the Browns, who have struggled. So I encourage you, look at the schedule. Start planning your Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays, Saturdays later in the season, to make sure that you are watching other teams so you can continue to have a better feel for what it's like to have a good team that you root for. That can really start to help your expectations. That can really help you understand the ebbs and the flows of games. I know last year when the Browns started winning games, there was often times where you could feel the fan angst as things slowed down. So the Browns get a lead against the Bengals and then let them slowly kind of creep back in. And you could hear fans, you could feel fans starting to wonder. But the reality is that happens all the time in the NFL, where the better team gets a lead and then they sit on the ball. They run the ball. They play things safe. And they let the clock do the work for them. That is what a lot of good teams will do once they feel like they've put, the knife in their back. They've kind of ended the game, is they let the clock do the work for them instead of risking with big plays and all the things that fans get excited about. So as Jake has just thrown gasoline on the hype fire, he has just told us that Baker Mayfield should expect to be a tier 1 top 5 quarterback in the 2019 season. That is a reasonable thing for him and the Browns to expect. I caution you to remember that doesn't mean Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns are going to be perfect. Even when you look at the New England Patriots' almost perfect season where they lost in the Super Bowl to the New York Giants, Eli Manning, David Tyree, all the different plays that happened in that game, even outside of that one loss, they were not perfect. And so, again, enjoy the process, enjoy the hype, enjoy the fact that Jake Burns just told us that you should be very excited about Baker Mayfield driving this hype train. Enjoy all of that. Just realize all of that, a good team with a great quarterback and what should be a very good defense, isn't going to be perfect. Perfection doesn't exist. Period. I was going to say in football, and then I was going to say in pro sports, and then I was really thinking about it, and I was going to say with humans. And then the reality is perfection doesn't exist. Doesn't mean we can't push for it, we can't want it, all of those things. But to expect perfection, especially in a game with so many variables. You have 22 people on the field, you have the field itself, you have the weather, you have the referees, you have all the fans, you have everything that can go on with each individual human. The number of variables in an NFL game is ridiculous. To expect perfection or anything close to that is unrealistic. But according to Jake, to expect a top 5 quarterback to be quarterbacking the Cleveland Browns in the 2019 season, that's not ridiculous. That's real. So again, follow Jake Burns at Jake_Burns18 for all his great work. I know he's been going through 100 and some of Baker Mayfield's best throws this season, so that's a really fun thread. Again, thank you, Jake, for coming on. Again, my name is Jared Mueller. I am your host here on the OBR Straight Talk. You can find me on Twitter at Jared K. Mueller. That's JaredKMueller. You can find the OBR at the OBR. You can also find us online at theobr.com. If you are a subscriber, I posted 3 different things in Rumor Central last night about Antonio Callaway and about Duke Johnson, and I just forgot what the third one was, but go ahead and check those out if you're a subscriber. If you have follow-up questions, again, as always, get back over to the Ask the Insider forum. And if you are not a subscriber, what are you doing? Come on, go ahead and get your information. Again, not to toot my own horn, but to tell you why there is value. A few of the things that I know that I have shared far in advance, besides just the schedule, besides some information about the jerseys, is Andrew Berry and him leaving. the Odell Beckham trade, and most of the details of that far in advance. Unfortunately, the Kareem Hunt information that I had, I was unable to share in advance for a lot of reasons. And then you have Lane Atkins, you have Tony Pauline, you have Brent Sobolewski, you have Fred Greetham, you have Bob Evans. You have a lot of us, Jonathan Stevenson. I know I probably missed somebody, and I apologize for that. That is just the way it is. But if you're not a subscriber, I encourage you to do that. If you're always worried about money, which I totally get, you'll look forward. We will have some kind of special coming up soon, I'm sure. We have it all the time. I'm not in charge of those, but I know it is coming. If not, if you don't want to be a subscriber, that is okay. Again, you can always find this content here on the OBR Straight Talk. And then join us in the water cooler. Join us on our website at theobr.com. Josh Edwards is always updating the site with information and reports and anything and everything you need. If you are wondering what happened with the Browns because you were at work on Friday, just go to the homepage. Josh probably has you covered. Whether it's news, whether it's somebody's report, whether it's somebody's thoughts on somebody's thoughts, whatever it is, I can guarantee you Josh Edwards has probably put it up on the site already. It's what I do. That's how I make sure I didn't miss anything. Again, I am Jared Mueller. I am your host. Until we talk again, have a great day and go Browns.